November meeting of Leeds Council Executive Board, and I'll just remind everybody at the start of the meeting that we are being webcast and welcome anybody watching online. I'll go straight to the items at the top of the agenda, please. So could we start with, are there any appeals against refusal of inspection of documents?
Thanks, Chair. To confirm, there have been no appeals received for today's meeting.
Thank you. Are there any exempt items, please?
Thanks, Chair. To confirm, there's no information on the agenda designated as being confidential or exempt from publication today.
Thank you. And there are no late items today. So I'll move on to the declarations of interest and turn to the board and see if anybody has any interest to declare. Councillor Lamb, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's just on item 7, just in the interest of transparency, to draw the board's attention to the fact I'm a member of the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, which may at some later stage consider bus reform proposals. I can confirm I'll be considering the item before me today purely as a member of Leeds City Council's Executive Board.
Thank you. And you beat me to it because I was going to declare the same interest, so I won't repeat everything you said, but I too am a member of the Combined Authority. I'm going to turn to item 5 and the minutes of the meeting held on 22nd November and check that everybody is happy with those. That's great. I'll take everybody is. So we'll move on to the first paper on the agenda. Councillor Lennox, please, in item 6.
Thank you. So this paper is a review of, or introducing a review of our lettings policy. So since the last lettings policy review, which was in 2019, we've seen a massive increase in the demand for social housing in Leeds, and the number of applicants assessed as having Band A priority on the register has increased by 34% since 2017. And we're seeing increasing numbers in temporary accommodation as a result of the average wait time for council housing. It's grown to almost 2.5 years. The pressures have been exacerbated by the pandemic, and in response to those pressures, in April 2022, we suspended the date of registration and the tenant transfer quotas within the current lettings policy. That would to allow us to increase the proportion of lettings made to customers who are in housing need. We're therefore seeking to review the lettings policy to ensure that we're giving priority to customers in the greatest housing need. And we're seeking Exec Board approval to consult on some of those proposed changes which are in the report. The changes include permanently removing the date of registration and tenant transfer quotas, reviewing the criteria for joining the register, increasing the length of time that priority is awarded for, introducing a direct let category for homeless customers, and reviewing our proposed approach to local lettings policies. And the consultation would take place, would begin in January 2024 and run for 12 weeks, and it would be really wide reaching and involve lots of customers and partners. And alongside the lettings policy review, we'd be delivering a communications campaign to highlight the pressures on social housing and to more effectively manage our customers' expectations and understanding of the process, and review our nominations agreements with housing associations as well to maximise their support in responding to the pressures that we're seeing and housing more people who are in need.
Thank you, Councillor Lennox. Are there any questions from the board? Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've had a very good briefing from officers on this, which I'm very grateful. I think the review is very welcome and long overdue. It poses some interesting questions and challenges. So I have one simple question for Councillor Lennox, which is it now the position of this administration that council houses are purely for people that need them, not for people that want them?
This is a review. This is a consultation, which will have outcomes. However, of course, our duty and what we would seek to do is house the people who need them, who need housing, using our council houses first, and that's what the current model of our lettings policy is as well. It's based on housing need. It would be about looking at how we can maximise the number of people that we can help, and if the consultation comes back and indicates that what we've proposed here about who can join the register is supported, then we could bring that back next year and discuss it further.
I think it's certainly credit to the service and the quality that we provide, that people want to be council tenants. I think that's something really, like I say, positive about about our role as a in-house council landlord, that people want to be our tenants in the housing market at the moment forever. So I do think that's an important point as well. Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Are there any more questions or comments from the board? I don't take it there are, so we'll move to the recommendations on page 21, which is to start the consultation. I'll take it. Everybody is happy with those. Thank you. So if we could move on to item 7, please, Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Leader. This is the Leeds City Council's response on the West Yorkshire Combined Authority bus reform consultation. So the report is being brought in response to the white paper resolution made at full council meeting on the 15th of November 2023. The report sets out the council's formal support for franchising proposals, as well as a fuller response to the consultation, raising further questions and points of clarification in a letter and questionnaire to the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. The franchising system is considered to be better aligned with a number of different Leeds City Council strategies due to the certainty it offers and the control over bus services and potentially mass transit in the future. So I'll leave it there, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Are there any questions, Councillor Lamb, please?
Yeah, it's a comment more than a question. And just to make clear, I do not support franchising. I think EP Plus, Enhanced Partnership Plus, is clearly, even based on the biased paper that's been presented by WICA, it is clearly the pragmatic, sensible option. This is going to cost hundreds of millions of pounds of taxpayers' money for them to drive on the same buses, on the same routes, with the same drivers, to the same places on a declining service. And the price we're paying is simply to transfer the risk of a declining service, which is predicted by WICA to decline further, onto the taxpayers and the fare payers. And I don't think, I'm not even sure everyone around this table realises quite how much of our net revenue budget every year is being contributed to the capital cost of that. So the choice you're making in supporting this is to close care homes, cut services, charge for parking fees, to pay for the vanity project of the mayor, and I absolutely cannot support it.
Councillor Hayden, please.
I don't accept the premise of that this our support for bus franchising, which will be a revenue money from a completely different revenue stream, is in any way linked to the incredibly difficult decisions this administration is having to make, which puts the most vulnerable people first and make sure that it's protected, it having to make because of 13 years of austerity and ideological cuts to local authority budgets. This is no way connected to this consultation on bus franchising. And to be honest, we've had a bus partnership for 25 years. We desperately need control of our buses so that it no longer goes into decline, and in enhancing a bus partnership that has not and is not working will not work in the future. And the only way forward is to have that control so that we can put buses on routes that people need and require, and the amount, and have that control so that democratically elected people, quite rightly, are responsible and have a duty to the people they represent in terms of our public transport in Leeds.
I decided we welcome the £70 million from the Combined Authority and the Mayor towards supporting our public services. We've got the local government settlement next week, and I'm sure by the end of the year we'll have had more support from the Mayor for our public services than we will from our national government. So it's really positive side of having a combined authority. Okay, I'm going to move. Do you have any? Okay, I'm going to move to the vote on item 7. Do I take it from your comments, Councillor Lamb?
Yeah, I do not support.
Okay, all right, we'll make sure that's recorded. Thank you. And we'll move to item 8, please, Councillor Arif.
Thank you, Chair. So play is essential in the development of a healthy and happy and in the development of happy and healthy children. So as a child-friendly city, I'm delighted to present this particular report, joint report from Councillor Venner and I. We are leading the way by being the first city in England to undertake a play sufficiency assessment. Play sufficiency is about listening to the experts in play, and that's children, and finding out about their lived experiences at a neighbourhood level. It's an ongoing process of research and action to assess, improve and protect children's play opportunities to play. This research has been carried out in some of the city's most deprived communities where we know health inequalities are at its widest. Extensive research has been conducted with over 50 hours spent listening to children and almost 900 surveys completed. Children and parents spoke about many things that stopped them from playing, volume of speed of traffic, parked cars, rubbish on the streets. They spoke about the lack of accessible playable green spaces, lack of a range of play spaces or no-go zones in communities that feel unwelcoming and unsafe. Even in many of our schools, playtimes and lunch times are not always a protected time for children to play. Play sufficiency is a powerful organising principle. It finds common ground between our city's policies, strategies and departments. It's about climate and clean air, about connecting and thriving communities, about health and well-being. We are already seeing how it can facilitate a multi-agency approach that is so crucial, particularly in areas where poverty and inequality is at its highest. Play sufficiency has been a powerful way of galvanising partners across the city at a time of less resource. The momentum and support for prioritising play is building. The 9 strategic priorities that have come out of the research provide the focus that is required to carry out this work. The recognition, support and championing of this work from Executive Board will be crucial in further facilitating cross-directorate support for play sufficiency and improving the time, space and attitudes to play. This paper proposes that Councillor Venner be appointed as a play champion who will lead the development of an action plan which will report annually to Executive Board. The Strategic Board, the Play Sufficiency Partnership, formed from a range of council and external partners from across the services, will also drive this work forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb, do you want to come in? Yes, please.
Yes, please, Chair. I hope I've demonstrated so far since I took over as leader of our group on the Executive Board that I'm more than happy to be constructive and supportive where that's appropriate. Sadly, this agenda doesn't give me too many opportunities to demonstrate that side. And this is one of those things I think the people of Leeds would look at this and say, really? You're going to tell us on the one hand that there's no money left and we've got to make really difficult decisions. And on the same day, we're choosing to prioritise time and resource on appointing Councillor Venner as a play champion and having a play strategy, including all of the staffing costs and resource that goes with that. And at the very same meeting, we're going to propose that we close down a valued multi-systemic therapy service for child abuse and neglect, which is a 24-hour frontline service which successfully reduces the number of looked after children in the city, the exact thing that's causing the biggest cost pressure facing the council. So we're going to come back to this theme again and again. You're making the wrong priorities and the wrong choices. And this is one I really think you need to think again. And again, I'm sorry, I can't support this.
Councillor Venner, please.
I must say, I'm really shocked that as the previous chair of children's scrutiny, you're not supporting something that is so clearly in the interests of children and so obviously supports our ambitions to be a child-friendly city. And Leeds is being very progressive in being the first council to have a play sufficiency strategy, because actually England really lags behind on this agenda. The devolved nations have enshrined the right to play in law, including the Welsh Government through the Future Generations Act. Children's right to play is really fundamental to children's health and well-being. And we know at the moment we have a crisis in children's mental health. And children, after the gravity of the last few years we've been through, have the right to have fun and play. And us recognising this as a council is supportive of that. And actually, it's not particularly resource intensive. It's about the council thinking about children and children's right to play across the department. So, for example, it's about people in city development, in urban planning, looking at child-friendly urban planning. That doesn't cost anything extra. That's about thinking when you're building something, where are children going to be able to play within this and where are children considered? So this isn't about spending a huge amount of money. The play enabling grants are £36,000 a year, which goes out to a huge number of community-based grassroots third sector organisations and enables people to be able to set up activities within their own communities. So I really think I'm very shocked that you're not supporting this, because you have a long-term interest in the well-being of children. And I really hope the rest of the city will not share your view. And I don't think they will, because I think most people recognise that children have the right to play and have fun. And that's a really important part of a happy and healthy childhood. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, I need to come back on that. So I'm sorry that that's the response, but the bit that shocks me is the executive member that's presiding over the most out of control budget in the city cannot make choices. This is about choices. You could deliver everything you've just described in this paper by asking community committees and local elected members to prioritise this with no cost and resource pressure. So it is not to say, and I think you know me well enough, that I don't support the aims and ambitions, but you do have some really difficult choices to make, and you're choosing to prioritise this over those children suffering serious abuse and neglect, and you are going to cut their service and prioritise this instead. You do have choices to make, and I'm saying you're making the wrong one here.
Councillor Venner, please.
Even if we did not have this play sufficiency strategy, we would still have to make the really difficult choices that we're making. If we did not have this paper coming today, we would still have the consultation on no longer having the MST CAN team, because we've had 13 years of chronic underfunding of council services. The demand on children's services nationally is spiralling in terms of the number of children coming into care, increased costs because it's such an unregulated market, because there's no national legislation around that. So don't think for a second that if we weren't having a paper on place efficiency, we wouldn't have to make the terrible cuts that we're having to make, not only in children's services, but across all directorates. And frankly, in the context that we're in, where we're talking about having to make such grim decisions, that, in my view, that makes it even more important that we prioritise children having a happy, healthy, fun-filled childhood. And children's right to play is fundamental in preserving their mental health and well-being, which is also a way of not having more children coming into care. But I'm just really clear. I don't want anyone sitting in this meeting or watching this meeting to think that if we didn't have this place efficiency strategy, we wouldn't be having to make some of the terrible decisions that we're having to make, because that is entirely due to government underfunding over the last 13 years and is affecting councils across the country, whether they're Labour-led, whether they're Tory-led, whether they're urban or rural. Everyone is struggling around children's services, and within that, we still have to have some positive, aspirational aspects of what we're doing that support children's well-being.
Julie, please.
Thank you. I'd just like to add, as it's set out in the paper, that Article 31 of the United Nations Conventions of the Rights of the Child enshrines the rights of children to play. I'd also really like to add and be really clear that, this is not about additional resources. In the same way, the same approach that we take to safeguarding across the council, so safeguarding being everybody's business, in the same way, the same approach that we have taken with the 3A strategy, so reading being everybody's business, whether you're a health visitor, whether you're a social worker, whether you're a family support worker, reading being key, being a golden thread to all activity. And in the same way, play is being seen. This is about an approach. It's not about additional resource. It's about an approach. It's about everybody in the directorate, our partners across the city, looking at their activity, their decision making, and looking at through the lens lens of children and the lens of play. It's about really maximising our resources and opportunity. I think the final thing for me is we are a child-friendly city. We're child-friendly Leeds, and key to that is us putting the voice of children at the heart of everything we do. The children of Leeds have spoken to us in terms of their wishes, their 12 wishes for the city, and central to that was play. They have told us they want safe places to hang out with their friends, especially post-pandemic. So really, this is us responding to the wishes and feelings and views of children in Leeds. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll stay out of the broader debate, but just to say, I do see this as very much part of the preventative agenda and the link to the Director of Public Health Victoria's report on the increase in mental health issues in young people and children in particular in Leeds over the last 2 or 3 years since the pandemic, and just wanted to say that it plays into a very strong and long-standing collaboration that's taken place between the child-friendly team in the council and lots of third sector organisations have been said, and people like Playful Leeds and Emma Behrman and others who've championed this agenda over many years, and it's important that we sort of recognise that as well. But yeah, I see this very much falling into the heading off problems that could appear further down the line.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to come in? Councillor Arif, please.
Yeah, just to further also add, Leeds became a marmot city earlier this year, and part of that is also looking at the wider determinants of health and actually the environment that you live in and you work in, and particularly in the most deprived areas, looking at, as Julie said, planning and green spaces. It's all working towards that. So this is something we ought to be proud of, and it's really important, as Julie said. Children are telling us they want this. So I'm really proud and will happily, and both of us are really happily, will stand behind this paper. This is really important work. And despite the challenges we've got, this is an agenda we must continue to forward. Ultimately, what we're doing here is what the children of Leeds want, and it's something that we're all proud of. Thank you.
Thank you. If nobody else wants to come in, I'll turn to the vote on this paper. Councillor Lamb, I take it you're not in favour? Okay, take it everybody else is in favour. That's great. So thank you, Councillor Arif, and we'll move on to your paper, please, Councillor Venner, item 9.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this report is describing the outcome of the statutory notice to permanently close the nursery at Rothwell Primary School, which will change the age of Rothwell Primary School from 3 to 11 to 4 to 11. In September, we brought this to Exec Board so you could see the outcome of the initial consultation on the proposal before publishing the statutory notice. The initial consultation was generally favourable because not having the nursery has created more physical space in the primary school, and the ward members have been briefed and didn't raise any concerns. During the statutory consultation, there weren't any representations received at all. So the recommendation is that we accept this, that the nursery will be permanently closed and the age will change to 4 to 11. The nursery's actually been closed for some time, and all the children that were using it have been found alternative places. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Venner. Are there any questions, Councillor Lamb, please?
I'm happy to support this one.
Thank you. There's no more comments from the board. I'll turn to the recommendations on page 131, and I take it everybody is happy with those. That's great. So we move on to my papers now under the leaders portfolio, papers that take us through to the Budget Council meeting in February and launch consultation. So I shall take item 10 first, which is the update of the Best City ambition, which we've been working on for a while. We've included the findings of the LGA peer review and their follow-up visit in the summer within these about how we work alongside as a council and our partners in the city to have joint and collective ownership over the outcomes that we want to see for the city and people that live here and all the organisations working in the city, and how we move forward in that way. We know we've got less money as a council. A lot of our other public sector partners are in a similar position, but we don't want to lose our vision and ambition for where we want to get the city to. So it is a paper that will be going for public consultation ahead of approval in the spring, and I'll leave my comments there. Anybody else on the board would like to come in, please? Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, I always ask pretty much the same question when this comes, and I'm going to ask it in a different way today. Which how will we know when we're the best city? So the question today is, what do you consider is the best city at the moment?
I mean, I'm biased. I consider Leeds to be the best city at the moment, but that's not that's not to say that we don't want to have that ambition and progress moving forward. We recognise there's areas where and we recognise there's areas where we do need to continue to get our results moving forward. We know, as I said, it's very clear from the government's autumn statement that public spending in all areas is on a downward trajectory at the moment, and that is going to mean it's harder for some organisations to continue delivering what they're doing, including ourselves, and I'm straying on to the next paper. But that doesn't mean we don't want to continue to have, first of all, the joint working between different organisations to try and get the best outcomes for people in Leeds, recognising lots of different organisations touch people's lives in different way, and they're all important. And secondly, to make sure we're continuing to do our overall task, which is tackling poverty and inequality, and it sets out in terms of the social progress index how we are going to attempt to measure progress against what we set out to do, particularly around, like I say, tackling some of the inequalities that we know in Leeds, as in all cities, are very prevalent.
If I may just come back, because that's the challenge. This has been our ambition since 2010, and with anything like this, you do need to know what the outcome is. How will we know when we've achieved our objective? So on a metric basis, we must have determined that, by the definition that this is our ambition, it's not to remain the best city, it's to become the best city. So on metric basis, what is it that we're measuring, and who's doing better than we are at the moment?
Tom, please.
Yeah, I think what we're concluding on this agenda is that there's no single measure that we would take as being the best city that that we can be. And the social progress index, I think, is a big step forward in providing an ability to benchmark with other cities, because it comes out of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. It's a widely used index that's used across the board, and I think in time that balanced scorecard, if you like, that balances the economic, social, environmental, and gives you a wider picture, will give you a better chance of answering the question. I also think it's dangerous to think that always the things that you can measure are the only things that are important. I think I would take three things recently that show we're on the right track. One is the figures on job growth, where we appeared recently as one of the fastest growing cities in the UK, if not the fastest, I think, from the ONS. Some of the ONS statistics that came back, and that marries with our housing performance. Secondly, the UN, on net zero, a sort of globally recognised independent score put us in the top 130 in the world on tackling net zero. And then on the social side, if you take things like the work that we do on homelessness and rough sleeping and look at our sort of comparator cities, we appear, one person homeless is too many, but we appear better. So I think, unfortunately, there's not a simple this is the metric answer to your question, but it's a good question, and the reason we got the social progress index in there is I guess in response to what you raised last time, partly.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to come in? No, great. So I'll turn to the recommendations on page 141 that we that we move forward on consultation on what's here, and I look forward to receiving the responses we do on this. I'll now move on to the next item 11, which is item 11A and B. I'll introduce them together, which is the proposed budget for 24-25 and the provisional budgets for 25, 26 and 26 and 27. The purpose of this paper is to start the consultation ahead of proposing the final budget at Exec Board in February and going to Budget Council later in February. As we always do, we bring our proposals forward before we know the final outcome of the government's local finance settlement. Obviously, we're all and we're all hopeful, if not optimistic, that we'll have a different picture in the year as the government responds to the financial pressure local councils are under. As this is going for consultation and for another exec board and full council in February, I shall leave my comments there and open it up to the board, please. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As is usual at this stage, we reserve our position on the budget at this point. I've just got two questions. So the first one is, can someone just confirm to me that the total amount we'll be spending on debt next year is 133.8 million out of a 609.8 million net revenue budget, which is about £1 in every 5 on debt?
I'll have to come back with just to confirm the figure.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the second question is just around consultation and the timing of it over Christmas to finish on the 31st of December. Do we think that's wise and fair on people? And is there not an opportunity to extend that a little bit further into January? I appreciate it makes the timing challenging, but I would make the point a lot of these proposals have been known about for a considerable amount of time and could have been consulted on sooner, and asking people to do it during the Christmas period is really going to skew the results and is not very fair on people.
Mariana, please.
I thought the consultation closed on the 10th of January, but I was just quickly looking in the papers because we're acutely aware of that. And certainly we're aware our neighbouring councils aren't necessarily having quite such a long window. So actually, although it's short in the circumstances, and given we don't get the settlement till next week, it's probably as long as we can afford to have a lead-in time for February council.
Yeah, if it's the 10th of January, I think that's perfectly reasonable in the circumstances. However, I'm aware that some aspects of consultation, such as car parking charges, are being asked to complete by the 31st of December. So if we could consider making sure everything that's being consulted on has the opportunity to the 10th of January, I think that would be fair and reasonable.
They might be from earlier proposals. Sorry, they've probably from earlier proposals, they've probably been out longer.
Thank you. I think we all wish we don't have to consult on budget proposals over Christmas, but the timetable that linked to, like I say, the government announcing the settlement when they do and things like that means that we do end up in this position every year, and we have to work to the external timetable. So with that, I note that Councillor Lamb is withholding his position on the budget proposals, as the opposition always do. So we're happy to move forward on consultation on this. And thank you. I move on to item 12, please, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Leader. And my item today is on the financial health monitoring. And I know that Executive Board have spent a lot of time on the financial challenges of the organisation in recent meetings. So just suffice to say that the situation in terms of the pressure in year and about the overspend has increased, and we're now reporting £35.3 million of pressure is likely to be overspent by the end of the year. The detail around that is in the paper, but as has already been mentioned in Executive Board, £32.7 million of that is in the children and families Directorate, which we are all really well aware of, as to why there is that amount of overspend and pressure within year, given the national picture, and also given the hopefulness of members of executive board around the government looking to fund children in local government in a better way than they are doing currently, because it's not sufficient for us to be able to do what we need to do with the funding that we get at the moment from the government. I'll leave it there for now, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On the latter point, I completely agree with you, and will continue to add my voice for what limited amount it's worth to the lobbying efforts to try and get some national changes, particularly around children's services. But that doesn't change the fact when we sat here earlier in the year with a significant overspend, it was clear it was going to get worse before it got better, but it was going to improve, and it did. And now it's got significantly worse again. And sadly, it's again children's services that have lost control of their budget, and everybody else has to pay the price. I understand to a degree why, but from what we've heard today and the things that are coming forward, I really don't think the elected member responsible is actually taking the challenge seriously to look in her department and prioritise. And yes, there is a national issue that needs addressing, but we have to make sure that everything's being done here in Leeds. I won't embarrass anybody around the table, but I'm sure I'm not the only person sat around this table who thinks it's time that Children's Services actually stepped up and started taking managing their budget properly seriously.
Julie, please.
Thank you. I think we have talked previously at many executive board meetings and at scrutiny about the work which is underway to address the challenges that we have got. As has already have been said, this is challenges at a national level. The Josh McAllister review was very clear in terms of the investment that was required for children and families services across the country. Again, nationally, locally, regionally, we have seen that ongoing increase in terms of demand, in terms of complexity of need, specifically, real focus around adolescence and the growing complexity of needs that we have in the city around adolescence. We have the delivery board, which we have reported on previously in terms of the cross-directorate work which is underway. In terms of children looked after, in terms of transport, in terms of our Little Owls provision. And that is detailed work. The cross-directorate approach, is working. Unfortunately, we continue to have the increased demand and those increased costs in terms of inflation, particularly around external residential placements and the costs which are passed from external providers to the local authority. We have a number of initiatives, a number of investor saves, some of which are in today's papers, and we continue to do our very best working across the council, working with our partners to address the challenges that we have got, again, at a national, a regional and a local level.
Thank you, Julie. Councillor Venner, please.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to address the kind of personal comment that I'm not taking this seriously, which is absolutely not the case. I am spending more time in meetings about finance than anything else, as is Julie and her senior team, as well as people from other directorates and Tom's senior leadership team. This is the biggest priority of the council at the moment, reversing the spending on children's services. However, I need to be really, really clear that this is not in any way due to mismanagement, and the fact that this is the position councils are in across the country reflects that. If only Leeds was in this situation, I think it would be an absolutely fair comment that we are not managing our budget properly. But actually, councils across the country aren't suddenly issuing 114 notices because all of a sudden they've become really poor at managing their budgets. It's because of years of cuts and also spiralling demand in children's services, with both regard to numbers of children coming into care and the costs of particularly external residential placements. And it's widely recognised that poverty is the biggest risk facing children at the moment and the biggest driver in why more children are coming into children's social care. And it's absolutely devastating that we did not get anything in the autumn statement for children's services, and it's created fury and distress in councils across the country. The County Councils Network have been particularly vocal about this. And on the 4th of December, they wrote to the Secretary of State calling for additional funding for children's in the upcoming settlement. And the reason I'm referring to them particularly is because that's Conservative councils. It's not only, Labour-led councils like ourselves who are complaining about this. And Councillor Lamb, I do appreciate what you said in the last exec board and in this exec board about agreeing with us on this and lobbying the government yourself. Robin Walker, the chair of the Education Select Committee, is also not only critical about the lack of funding for children's social care, but he's also critical that the outcome of the Children's Social Care Review is not being implemented quickly enough. We absolutely desperately need more funding in children's social care. We need more funding to address the current crisis, but we also need more sustainable funding to rebalance the system, because at the moment, all the money is being spent at the crisis end of children's social care, with more children coming into care. But this is absolutely a national problem. It is not about myself or Julie or anyone in this council not managing our budget properly. And we're doing everything we can in extremely challenging circumstances to turn the curve and reduce expenditure. But it's extremely difficult to do so when more and more children are coming into care because we're in a cost of living crisis sparked by 13 years of austerity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Venner. Tom, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I can confirm that this is the priority issue for the senior team in the council, and that there's a huge amount of work being spent, time and work and energy being spent around getting it into a position that is manageable. And Julie, Victoria, myself, the rest of the senior team are absolutely doing that, and doing it with members, as has been said, very, very closely. I think that you support, Councillor Lamb, for the national lobbying is really welcome, and I think we've got to collectively keep that dialogue going, because I think there was, that there is an active listening, I would say, going on in the civil service about this issue. I think I'm certainly detecting that the officials are very aware of the issues and are trying to understand it and get the best picture of it for to present to ministers, as we do to executive board in this way. So I'd encourage us to, if we can continue that work through the LGA with yourself, I think that'd be really helpful. I think there are a series of things that have a confluence of issues that have put us in this position this year, that are around national, elements of the national situation, to do with the overall pay rise and the funding of that in the council more generally, but affecting children's services, the impact of the pandemic, and then the cost of living crisis and the demand that's created in the system, as Councillor Venner said, for vulnerable families who are finding it much more difficult to operate in the way that they were previously. And then the overall impact of some other funding that tends to be more 1 year, as in the issues like asylum, where actually we need support for the wider impact of those costs on the system as we move forward. I can absolutely say as well that where there is choice, we are absolutely making a choice to try and address this budget issue. But there are some areas where we don't have a choice, and that's where we've got to hold the line on keeping children safe and our safeguarding statutory responsibilities that I know you and everybody around the table supports as well. This has been the hardest thing to deal with financially since I've been here at the council, and that includes the first year of austerity, which is probably up there as well. And I think we need to see this as probably a 15-month stabilisation of the children's budget, and that's why the proposals that are in for the overall budget for next year are part of this equation as well, because getting down from the current figure of overspend by the end of the financial year is going to be, very, very, very difficult. But stabilising this element of the budget over a period of 6 to 9 to 12 months is what we're going to do. And that work has started. It's starting to make a difference in some areas. It needs more time, but we've got to have that collective laser-like focus on it, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you, Tom. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, thank you. I accept a lot of the points, as I said at the start, but I'm still not convinced, and I will touch on it in the next report, that actually we are doing everything that we can do. Not from any bad intent. I think the intent is always about trying to do the very best for children and families, but we can't use the national financial challenge as the cover for everything and every decision and priority that's made. And that's my point. I can't understand why in a demand-led budget, I can't think of once, I'm happy to be corrected, in 17 years of being in this place, where the budget update has come and we spent less than expected. That the demand was yes, it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen, but I can't ever recall particularly the Children and Families Directorate in any time, any form, coming and saying, actually, demand wasn't as much as we thought it would be. And is there anyone around the table that thinks this budget, we won't be in the same position again next year, having set a budget for children and families that will then have to deal with another overspend, and every other part of the council will have to step up to plug the gap? I certainly am fully expecting that's what will happen again.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And I just want to give Councillor Lamb some reassurance really around the rigour and oversight that is happening. So we are not hiding behind a national picture at all. We are part of that national picture. We are the second largest authority outside of London, and we have a really sizable children and families directorate with a lot of children that we need to look after and a lot of prevention that needs to be put in place to help keep those children and families safe and stable. But just to reassure you that rigour and oversight is happening. There is a cross-council group that meets on a regular basis at a high level that are looking into line by line on budgets in children and families to see how we can look at things in a different way, maybe, or to look to see how other directorates can actually maybe help with some of those overspends. I'd also like to let you know that there is political oversight from myself, Councillor Venner and Councillor Pryor, with the directorate and the resources director as well, to ensure, and that's on a bi-monthly basis, to ensure that all is being done to achieve those savings proposals and to keep the budget within the amount that it should be kept within. But I have to say that when we are faced with increased numbers of children needing to come into care for varying reasons, that actually we don't ask Julie to come to us and say, please, can I do that, councillor, because I'm going to go over budget, that she has autonomy to be able to run her department how she feels fit. And when we do need that extra resource to look after and safeguard children in this city properly, that we do so. And I will continue to support that right for us to be able to do that as well. And
And so we are not hiding behind a national picture at all, but you must recognise that we are part of that national picture. And somebody that has, I know, such an interest in children's rights and safety, I would think that you would be supportive of all our efforts to try and bring the overspend, not just in children's, but elsewhere within the organisation, to a limit that we can actually afford to achieve. But let's not forget why we're here in the first place. It's 13 years of cuts and austerity that this council have faced. I remember pre-2010 when we were actually debating in council about us having such a minimal increase in council core funding. We got 6% the last year that I remember of it. Oh boy, how I would like to see a 6% rise right now in our funding from the government. But instead of which, we don't see that. We see a further decrease and a further addition into our already £2.5 billion that we're not getting from the government.
Thank you. Victoria, please.
I just wanted to add that since 2021-22, it's the average cost of a placement that's significantly increased, and that's by 39%. So the numbers, although have increased and the complexity has increased, it's where we've had to place those children, and the cost of that in the external market is just blowing out of the water, and that is the issue. And that's the issue that we need to sort out nationally. And that's why all councils are really struggling. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Councillor Lamb, please.
I totally accept that point, and frankly, I think it's outrageous, even as a Conservative who's reasonably comfortable about people making a profit, making the level of profits that are being made off the backs of the most vulnerable children isn't right. And I'm ready to lead the charge with anybody to try and resolve that aspect of the issue, because it is a disgrace. It's a national disgrace that so much profit is being made off the backs of people in the most vulnerable circumstances.
Thank you. We are working to have more in-house provision ourselves. We certainly welcome those comments, Councillor Lamb, and look forward to working with you on taking that forward. I'm going to turn to the recommendations on page 420. I take it everybody is happy with those recommendations, so we will move on to the last paper, item 13, please, Councillor Pryor.
Thank you, Leader. So this is an update report on education, health and care plans, the review process for children with SEND. As the board will know, there's been a huge increase in the number of children applying for EHCPs. I believe the number has increased by over 500,000, with a huge increase happening particularly since COVID, as well as the complexity of cases that come forward. The children they need support, it's a mix of children who will need support throughout their entire school career, along with some children who will need some additional support following COVID. Often that's around phonics, it's around mental health, it's around socialisation. It's why I'm really pleased we are doing proactive work like Councillor Arif and Councillor Venner's Leeds Place efficiency work that can really help tackle the mental health crisis and a lot of that socialisation issues which children are having coming out of COVID. This report details what Leeds is doing. It follows a paper in October where we detailed a lot of the issues we were facing, and this report talks through the next steps. It was really disappointing in the autumn statement to see that the government not give any additional funding for children with SEND and really not acknowledging the SEND crisis across the country. But this paper details what we in Leeds are doing and getting on with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pryor. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I just come back? Was it, Julie, was it PwC that you commissioned to do a report into this? Can someone tell me how much that report cost, please?
I don't have that exact figure to hand, Councillor Lamb, but we can certainly send you that information.
Okay, I'm assuming someone will have it, given all the bi-monthly oversights of the budget. Someone will recall the figure.
Thank you. I've heard the officer say the information we got to Councillor Lamb.
Okay, so did it tell us anything that elected members, including myself, haven't been telling you and your predecessors for some time?
I think the piece of work has been really, really vital. I think it has been detailed. I think it has highlighted things actually that haven't been highlighted with us, from yourself and from others in direct response to the direct question that you've asked. I think we had a view of the challenges that we again have had in the service because they are reflected at a national level. If you look at the Sen Green Paper, if you look at other national documents which describe a broken system, it describes the increase that we have had across the country in children who do have additional complex needs, and the fact that what we do have at the moment, again nationally, is a system that's not responding to those needs. As has been said, we've had that significant increase in Leeds in terms of children who are requesting an assessment for EHCP plans and who are then subject to an EHCP plan. So we were well aware of the pressures, we were well aware of the additional increase that we have had, but this piece of work actually has highlighted areas within the end-to-end process that we can work on, and that we weren't acutely or weren't visible, if you like, without that detailed piece of work. We've looked, as we've said, about the end-to-end EHC process, but we've also looked beyond that. I think this piece of work has also enabled us to involve directly partners. And when I say partners, children, young people, parents, carers, education colleagues across the city. So it's been a detailed piece of work which has included and reflects the voice of our key stakeholders. It has and it will give us a really clear, detailed, robust plan of action, which we will implement and which I have no doubt will make the required improvement for children and families within the city.
Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, thank you for that. And as you know, I've had a strong interest in this for quite some time. I welcome the fact that the piece of work is being done. I hope and think you would accept, while yes, again, there is a national issue, what's been identified here by PwC and was brought to not just your attention. To be fair, Julie, from bringing it to your attention, you've acted, and I thank you for that. And without hesitation, from the second you became director, you have been on this and dealing with it. Your predecessors, sadly, on this issue, were much more defensive and not open to it. What the report shows and what I think you've identified is this is not just about a national issue. Yes, there is more demand. The problem is the way we've been dealing with things in Leeds, which hasn't been good enough for families and children. That's the key bit. And then it costs more to resolve the issues because we have to put so much intensive resource in then to deal with the issues. Is that a fair assessment?
Julie, please.
I think what I would say, in the same way, I think as we've talked in a previous discussion at this meeting, as a large core city, the second biggest city in the country, we have been adversely impacted by the pandemic. That's absolutely clear. And I think this item, this agenda is no different. So what we did see during the pandemic really was the service, our learning inclusion service, impacted in quite an adverse way. Equally, the increase, of complexity of need, during the pandemic has had a direct impact on, on our ability to meet need. So what I would say is that we are really still recovering from that. We have, as I've said, as a large core city, there has been specific implications of the pandemic. And that's something that we've acknowledged. That's something that was acknowledged at the time. And we are, we're working our way out of that, and we're determined to do that. Hence us commissioning and hence us investing, not only in the relationship with PwC, but investing in time with our partners. I think as of last week, I've now met with the 18 families of schools in the city, So probably more than 200 head teachers, who have influenced this work. What that discussion shows is the challenges for the whole system. It's not just a challenge for the Children and Families Directorate. Schools are talking about the challenges, of children coming into primary school, coming into reception class who are non-verbal, who, the behaviour issues in terms of sort of biting, challenging behaviours, and still in nappies. So this is an issue that is challenging the whole of the system in Leeds, not just the Children and Families Directorate. And actually, the seriousness within which we are all, approaching this agenda, I think is clear by the fact that we have commissioned this piece of work. We are absolutely determined to get the improvement that we need and to get better outcomes for children and families.
Thank you, Julie. Tom, would you like to come in, please?
Just to support what Julie said, and I think we have been trying to really get behind this issue and respond to the concerns that have been raised by families and yourselves and others, elected members around the table as well, and really understand the issues. And I think I've been one of those over the years that's been very keen on us building our own capacity rather than relying on external help at times. But I think you do reach the point with certain issues where you, certainly in the situation we're in and having to keep our head count at a certain level, it does drive you in, you don't have people in the organisation that you can use flexibly to do pieces of work like this. So we didn't have the capacity internally. Those people were actually working full time on trying to address the issues themselves. The other time when it becomes, the right thing to do to bring in external help is one, when you need an independent view, which I think we really recognise we did need. And I think that's helped the families and the young people and our external partners be able to feed back in a very, in a way that was very objective, and for us to get that full picture. And secondly, to get access to specialists who've done this with others across the country, and to test your point, which is it something that we're doing, or is it actually something more endemic in the system? That I think it is principally about the situation that Julie's outlined nationally, but there are always ways we can improve the way we work. We should have that culture in the organisation and any organisation. And if there are things that come out of this that show that, I think we'll absolutely be picking those up. And in a service like this one, where there's a long history of proud support for families and people in the city, very hardwired into the way the schools work, probably more strongly than in other places, and a really big focus on equity and doing the right thing for families and for young people, that's when, again, that sort of independent view is needed, because I think that worked really well in the past, but in the current circumstances, it's just been harder and harder to carry that and work in the same way with the demand in the system. So, I'm very much convinced that this, on this occasion, this external help will show real value for money. And I expect us to get, that word invest to save. I think it will get better outcomes for families, and in the longer term, save us some resources in terms of the challenge that we've got in the budget more generally.
Thank you, Tom. Does anybody else want to come in on this item? Okay, I'll turn to the recommendations on page 465. And I take it everybody on the board is happy with the recommendations. That's great, thank you. And I shall draw the meeting to a close, and I wish everybody a very happy Christmas and all the best for 2024 when it finally arrives. And we'll see each other back again in February. Thank you.